Good afternoon, everyone. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that as of last night, some 80,000 people have been displaced from Rafah since Tuesday, when the Israeli military's ground operation there began. Most of those displaced people are seeking safety in Khan Yunis and Deir el-Bala. These areas lack the basic services needed to support civilians who need food, shelter, and healthcare. No humanitarian assistance or the fuel to power our aid operations has been able to enter through the Rafah crossing in recent days. The World Food Programme reports that its main warehouse in Gaza is now inaccessible. It says that only one bakery is still working and that supplies of food and fuel are running out. Without them, WFP says its operations will come to a standstill. The UN Relief and Works Agency in Gaza says that some hospitals will start shutting down their generators in 3 days if we don't get fuel in. UNRWA says that as of today, its facilities are down to almost no fuel, rationing the small amount that is still in place in Gaza. As we told you yesterday, we continue to engage with all involved on the resumption of the entry of goods, including fuel, and so that we can again begin managing incoming supplies. Yesterday, OCHA, alongside UNRWA, the UN Mine Action Service, and the UN Department of Safety and Security, were at the Kerem Shalom and Rafah crossings to assess the security situation. The area is highly militarized, making it impossible for organizations to distribute at the scale they previously did. The situation remains extremely fluid, and we continue to confront a range of challenges amid active hostilities. Meanwhile, debris on the roads has made these routes impassable for the time being. We're exploring alternative solutions, including use of the fence road or other routes. The daily exchanges of fire across the blue line are deeply concerning, profoundly impacting towns and villages on both sides. Many people have been displaced, injured, and killed, including today. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon is working continuously to decrease tensions with hundreds of daily activities aimed at de-escalating situations and assisting local communities within its mandate. The ultimate solution can only be political and diplomatic. We urge all parties to reaffirm their commitment to the cessation of hostilities and to upholding their obligation under Resolution 1701. Do we have any questions? Yes, Edie.
Thank you, Farhan. On Gaza, can you give us some more granular details on what kind of negotiations are taking place to get aid into Gaza? And also, some NGOs say that the Israelis have actually intensified fighting and attacks in Rafah. And can you give us any update on what UN staff there are saying about what's going on specifically in Rafah?
Okay, on your second question, yes, I was in touch with someone who's on the ground in Rafah just over the past hour, who talked about how there has been not ground operations nearby, but shelling nearby in different parts of Rafah. That is what has been leading to the displacement of people. I said, just as you were coming in, that something on the order of 80,000 people have left Rafah for surrounding areas. At this stage, that number is increasing by the hour, and we could be close to about 100,000 by now. So there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of tension, and yes, there have been different strikes in and around that area. Regarding your first question, I mean, we've made clear what our points are in terms of the problems having to do with fighting in the area, the bad condition of roads, the difficulties we're encountering simply trying to get aid. One of the things that's important to point out is that what we are reiterating to the parties is that their obligation to facilitate humanitarian aid doesn't end at the border or at the drop-off zone. That their responsibility continues because aid has to safely reach the people who need it. So simply dropping it off at a place is not sufficient. It's certainly not sufficient, for example, for our truck drivers who are operating under extremely tense circumstances and unsafe circumstances as they try to load trucks and get them to other places. And of course, for us as well, there's the added problem of the lack of fuel necessary to actually go to different locations throughout Gaza.
And just as a follow-up on the U.S. pier, there's been an announcement from Cyprus that the ship has sailed with aid, and that it's apparently going to the U.S. pier. Has any agreement been reached between the United Nations and the United States on UN involvement in distribution of aid?
We are continuing those discussions, so those are ongoing. We hope to be ready whenever aid arrives at the pier, but certainly the World Food Program stands ready to distribute aid if and when you have a drop-off of aid at the pier, and once there's an agreement on how it will travel.
And am I right in assuming that that aid, any aid, could not be distributed at this moment because of the conditions in Gaza?
We're trying as best as we can to deliver aid. We're hopeful that in the next day or so we can get actually fuel coming in through one of the crossing points, but we're not at that point yet. Obviously, there's different things we need, with security and fuel now being at the top of our concerns. But we are working with the relevant authorities, and we'll try to get things moving as quickly as we can. Ultimately, the people who need our help, they can't wait.
Okay. The Israelis have announced several times that Kerem Shalom is open now. You say it's highly militarized. Can you give some details on what that means?
Well,
The UN can't use it yet, or what?
I mean, there are difficulties. Like I said, we had people assessing the situation on the ground, and I just told you what their assessments were. I mean, basically, besides the lack of fuel, we need to make sure that security and logistical conditions around the Kerem Shalom crossing allow for a consistent daily flow of supplies into Gaza. Right now, it's a militarized zone. Roads are unsafe. Security accidents have affected commercial transport, and of course, the lack of fuel adds to all of those problems. Gabriel.
Thank you, Farhan. You said that there's only the World Food Program main warehouse is inaccessible. Is that the one in Rafah or somewhere else? Do you know?
Let me just check. I believe that is, but let me look at what I read to you. Sometimes it's hard to remember what you just said.
No problem.
Yeah, it's main warehouse in Gaza. I believe that is the one that they have in Rafah. Yes.
Okay, and you also said only one bakery was still working. Is that where, though? Do you know?
I don't know where the WFP
Okay.
bakery is that's working. I'll ask them.
No problem. Thank you. And so just to be clear, I may have missed this, but are you able to get any aid in through the Kerem Abu Salem crossing right now?
I've heard disputing accounts. I think some aid is coming in. The conditions, as I've told you, are extremely fragile. So we'll have to see whether it's within our capabilities to move it from Kerem Shalom to other places. But we're working with the authorities. We're trying to get the understandings on the ground. So hopefully there'll be things coming through even over the course of today if things work out.
Can I ask one more, Farhan?
Sure.
Thank you. You said 80,000 people have been forcibly displaced from Rafah. But
I didn't say forcibly displaced. I said that some people are leaving because of the current tensions and fighting. I mean,
well, why are they leaving?
They're leaving because of the strikes in the area. So
They're
obviously
leaving voluntarily, or?
they're leaving out of fear.
Okay, all right. You said that the number might now be close to 100,000. So it sounds like that's just within the perhaps last 24 hours. That's an estimate that you're giving, perhaps. Is that, did I read
That's an
that
estimate.
correctly?
Yeah, that's an estimate, and at least we can attest to about 80,000. But the last hours have seen more and more people leaving, and obviously, if you were in their situation, you would probably make the same decision.
Thank you.
Deji.
Yes, Farhan, follow up on the border crossings. So now there are still no UN-led humanitarian deliveries go through Rafah and as well as Karim Shalom. Is that correct?
I would say that's correct for Rafah. The situation around Karim Abu Salam is a little bit more hazy, and I think we're trying in discussions with authorities to see what can be done to get things in.
Kogat posted videos of trucks passing through that crossing. So that's not an UN-operated truck.
Well, I think, again, some of this is aid that's gone to a drop-off place, but for the reasons I've just been laying out a few times over, it's difficult to actually get that aid loaded onto trucks and distributed. Again, our basic point is the objective is not simply to bring aid into a crossing point and drop it off. We want conditions to exist so that we can get aid to the people who need it. And so that is the responsibility of the parties.
But that's East Rafah, which means it just like you said, it's a militarized zone now. Do you have any estimation how much time would it take to make that yet again operatable?
It can be done quickly depending upon what happens with conditions, specifically in terms of conditions having to do with fighting. Obviously, we have warned for several weeks prior to this how much an attack on Rafah would complicate our aid efforts, and we are now at that point.
What about the status of the fuel? Because a couple of days ago, Andrea here talking about the importance of fuel. It operates everything. You said the fuel left for UNRWA almost done.
Yeah, basically we're at the stage of just rationing what we have. There is a hope that we can get some fuel in over the next day, but obviously we have to see whether that will actually happen or not.
Through Karim Shalom?
Possibly through the Erez crossing, possibly through a different crossing. I mean, there are many ways to get aid into Gaza if there's a will from the various parties to allow it.
And one last thing. From my experience, sometimes the political moves always connects with ground operations. Do you worry the ESS tomorrow would prompt the Rafah operation, ground operation?
We'll have to see what tomorrow brings, obviously. Yes.
Farhan, so basically the Wafa news agency, the Palestinian news agency, cited the UNRWA saying that 100,000 people in Rafah were ordered to leave, to move to eastern Rafah by the Israelis.
I'm not aware of that. Obviously, there have been different messages coming out from the Israeli side. From our standpoint, people need to be able to stay into places where they feel safe. They shouldn't have to leave, but also, of course, from our standpoint, no part of Gaza is safe. So the warnings that we made at the start of this briefing are where we stand. Ibtisam.
Farhan, I want to follow up on this point because actually, on Gabriel's point, because actually yesterday Stefan and OCHA representative did say that the people were forcibly displaced. And also we have pictures for days now showing that the Israelis give orders to the population in Rafah in some areas to leave the areas to places where actually there is no water, no electricity, etc. So I found it a little bit striking that you are taking this back. Is it just?
Well, I'm not taking it back so much as saying some of the departures in recent hours. It's difficult for me to determine at this point why they're going where they're going. So I'm not going to make a blanket categorical statement. Beyond that, when we say forced displacement, we're talking about involuntary displacement. People having to move because they're compelled to do so. So obviously, if they're moving from fear, that is also counts as forced displacement. International law requires that any evacuation orders must be done lawfully, which means having key safeguards in place. We have said repeatedly that under international law, civilians must be protected and have their basic needs met, whether they move or stay. Those who are ordered to evacuate must have enough time to do so, as well as a safe route and safe place to go, and they must be guaranteed the right to voluntarily return, as international law demands.
I have another question on the Israeli authorities demolished, I think yesterday or maybe today, houses of Bedouins in the Naqab area in South Israel. They are Palestinian citizens of Israel. Made more than 400 people homeless. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, the Special Coordinator's Office will be following up, but obviously we stand against the demolition of homes if it's done improperly. Sharife?
I'm going to go back to the forced displacement because I have difficulty understanding. How do you define the forced displacement that is the war crime? I mean, which one is the war crime? When is it a war crime?
War crimes are those that are determined by legal bodies. They're not certainly going to be determined by me here at this podium. But regarding forced displacement, the definition I just read out to you is where we stand on it.
But I mean, how? Okay, the courts are going to decide if something is a war crime or not. But if the UN is saying there is forced displacement, isn't that a war crime? Isn't forced displacement a war crime? I mean,
I think you can read international law as well as I can, but it is not for me to say whether this or that act that is happening is a war crime. That will need to be determined by a court.
but you can call it a forced displacement. Would you call it a forced displacement? Because under, I think, how the UN defines it, it's that it occurs when individuals and communities have been forced or obliged to flee or leave their homes as a result or in order to avoid conflict or in situations of armed conflict.
Yeah,
So this is the UN definition of war
Yes.
crime.
And you can see
forced
how,
displacement.
and you can see how what's happening today meets that definition.
Thank you.
Yes, Dulcie.
Yeah, just a few more Gaza questions. So you mentioned the Erez crossing. Is that inactive or active?
We're discussing trying to see what we can do. I believe that that goods have intermittently been passing through there as crossing. I don't know what the status is of it today.
Okay, and then Samantha Power put out a readout of her phone call with Guterres yesterday. She didn't say anything about the U.S.-led pier, at least it was not in the readout. Did she discuss that with the Secretary General?
The Secretary General has discussed the pier with many different officials. I don't have a readout of that particular phone call to share with you, but certainly the Secretary General and, of course, Sigrid Kaag have been discussing with a number of governments how the pier fits in.
Then the fact that the WFP is scheduled to pick up the goods from this drop zone off the causeway, presumably they would get fuel prioritized?
Let's see what the coming days bring about that. We're trying to get fuel in.
So yesterday there was a lot of statements about the Kerem Shalom crossing. There were reports in Israel of shooting, Hamas shooting at the crossing yesterday. And today, Kogat published videos of trucks going on through Kerem Shalom. What is the status as far as you're concerned?
I'm not going to repeat all the things I said
No,
prior.
of course
but,
not. I'm sorry.
But the short answer is that we're in touch with the authorities. We've talked about what the problems are getting aid through Kerem Shalom, and we want to make sure that that the responsibilities don't end simply with a drop-off of aid, but that we can ensure that aid can go to the people who need it. So once it gets to the drop-off point, it continues to be safe for them to go on forward from there.
When you say ensure with Hamas, with Israel?
With all of the relevant authorities. And of course, regarding Hamas, we've made it clear that we want to make sure that they don't attack the entry points for
I'm sorry,
humanitarian
where did
aid.
you make that clear?
What?
Where did you make that clear?
In,
I mean,
in-
because
in our-
in
in-
the statement that when the Secretary General was here 2 days ago, he basically urged Israel to open the Kerem Shalom crossing a day after it was closed because of Hamas shooting. He didn't mention Hamas.
we have made it clear to all of our counterparts on the ground, including those from the de facto authorities.
But not publicly.
What?
But not publicly.
Am I not public?
Now you are, but I'm saying that before you said we've made it clear. Have.
Yes,
As in
and
past tense.
we, as in people like myself and Stefan, have also been making this clear as we talk to people.
Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: African politics, economy, and increasing power. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Tell us what you think in the comment section. Like and share the video, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our African videos. It's the best way to support us.